was hard to come to terms with. My body still wasn't healing, it wasn't recovering. And so around February, actually, it was Super Bowl Sunday to be exact. The Olympic team's doctors said, "Can you get on a plane? We got permission to get you a blood transfusion so that your body can start to heal." So I missed my half of my Super Bowl party that I hosted at my own home. I had to peace out from to go to the hospital to
Man.
get this blood transfusion. Yeah. So I did that in February. Um, they gave me, I was under observation for a few days because they never know how you're going to react to getting, that much blood from a different source. So I came home, finally got to start working out on the track. Now it's late February, and in March, COVID shut everything down. And so I had just gotten back on the track, just started to be able to go to practice and feel good. And then they were putting padlocks on the track, and it was over. At least that's what it felt like for me. And I'll be honest, the first thing I did, I cried. The very first thing I did was I cried. I freaked out. I was like, why is this happening? I ran the entire gamut of emotional distress, because what I've learned in my life is that if you don't give yourself the space or the permission to feel whatever it is you're feeling, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt later. So there's no sense in trying to pretend you're feeling a way that you're not, because that dishonesty manifested in your body as stress, as little nagging injuries you can't get rid of, or like not being able to sleep. So I don't do that to myself anymore. So yeah, I freaked out. But then after, I went through the emotions and doing all that, because, it runs out of steam. And some of
Mhm.
us get in trouble by trying to hold on to feelings for longer than they want to stay around, right? Some of us just really like to just stay in the dumps when you know that just a little decision and you can move on to something else. So when I realized I was ready to move on, the first thing I did was focus on the things that I can control, because I didn't control anything else going on in the world. And so for me, that was like, okay, if I don't have a track, how do I achieve my strength goals, my speed goals without a track? And so I sat down and developed all of these things that were within my control to address a specific problem. Another thing is I buckled down on my diet. I said, look, if I'm not going to be on the track working out 4 to 6 hours like usual, then there's a risk that, I'm going to be at home snacking, doing way too much, eating way too much, and gaining weight, which will ultimately work against me. So I made sure that I nailed down my fuel plan. Like made sure it was on point so that I wouldn't play myself. Because as you guys know, back then, there were no definitive there was no information. It was like, maybe in a couple weeks we'll be back to normal. Maybe we'll still have our state championships. Maybe this, maybe that. And so I really decided that all I could do was stay ready so that I wouldn't have to get ready, so that I wouldn't have to be caught off guard thinking that like this was going to be some vacation and then have to run myself back into shape later. So to sum all that up, I just took a really hard look at what I could control and decided to just stay ready. And if it turns out that I stayed ready for nothing, what's the worst that could happen? I'm in shape for no reason. But if I decided to go the other way and decided to just wait and see, I'm out of shape when an opportunity presents itself, and or I'm just like so far behind when I return to training, I'm going to be kicking myself in the butt for not setting myself up for success later. So that's really the approach that I've taken. That's not to say it's been easy or that I've been motivated every day, but that is what I committed to doing for myself.
As an athlete, I think I saw somewhere where you had posted about the motivation. You're gonna always get into that mode where you don't feel motivated, but then your discipline has to take over. I think this is something that the girls need right now because they don't see any motivation right now. Oh, there's a lot of uncertainty going on. Track ain't don't start till February for us. So
Hmm.
what's some things they can do to stay motivated right now? Because they've been out of school for 5 months.
Right. I would say don't worry about trying to manufacture motivation. because that's energy that you could put elsewhere, right? So the thing that I would challenge all of you on this Zoom call to do is really take a hard look at your goals right now. Take a really good look at what they are and really fine tune them, because I find that when I'm not motivated, and I'm not, there's no Olympics this year, there's no national championships this year. Americans have been banned from going to Europe, which is where I move in the summer and have all my competitions. It's where all of my money making ability is there, and I can't go. And yet, I still go to the track every day. Why is that? That's because the goal that I have to defend my Olympic title is bigger and is a more powerful fuel source than the motivation that I have to do it right now. So that's the thing. Motivation will almost always run out on you. But if you are really, really committed to the goals that you have, then you just use the discipline to make sure that happens for you to get through the daily grind and the lack of anything cool or fun happening right now.
Okay,
Did
cool.
that make sense?
Yes, yes. Well, I don't want to ask all the questions. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it open for the girls. Ladies, if y'all have something y'all want to ask, go ahead. Go ahead and ask it right now.
Please do. I don't bite, especially through Zoom.
Now, all of y'all on here, nobody asking the question. Come on, y'all.
Oh, if it's easier, ask it in the chat if you want to, and I'll answer it that way.
I got a question.
Sometimes that's a little easier.
Somebody
Yeah.
has one.
I was gonna say, what would you say your hardest thing was moving from high school to college and college to pro?
Yeah, the transition. Ooh, the devil is in the details when it comes to the transition. Great story for you. It was like the second week of practice at the University of Tennessee. And I'm not proud of it, but our little sprint group got into a little bit of a argument, little scuffle at practice second week. And one of the girls was like, I don't know who you're talking to, but I'm the Georgia State champ. And other girl was like, okay, I'm Texas State champ. And then, I chimed in and I'm like, well, I'm the Ohio State champ 9 times. And then somebody else chimed in like, and I'm the Louisiana State champ. So already right then, all of us who had been top dog in our state were now in a situation where we all were on that same level. And so you have to understand, going into college, anything you were before then definitely deserves acknowledgement because it got you your foot in the door in college, but you're back at zero. And you need to work like you're at zero, because nobody cares what you did in high school once you step foot on campus. And the sooner we realize that, the better. And then we were able to shift our focus from not being so offended when somebody corrected us, because, once upon a time we were the baddest girl at the high school. Once we shifted focus from that to focusing on how to distinguish ourselves, not just from our training group, but in the conference, we became better athletes. It's a little bit different when you transition from collegiate to pro, and it really depends on how you do it. So for me, I won world championships when I was a sophomore in college. So I was a pro my junior year in college. I was 19 years old when I signed with Nike. And so that transition was a little bit different. It was like I barely had a college experience and now it's my full-time job. Whereas the more traditional route is you exhaust your collegiate eligibility and then you basically graduate into the pro ranks for track and field. And the biggest thing that you have to do is, where you were once around the clock regimented, where your coach was telling you what to do and when to do it, that no longer, discipline now is your responsibility. And a lot of athletes don't think about that part, because once contracts come into play and money starts to change hands, you are now a business person. And so it's really important that you develop all of those skills now: time management, self-motivation, self-discipline, all of that stuff, so that it can ease your transition into each increasing level of track and field. Move on to something else. So when I realized I was ready to move on, the first thing I did.
Any more questions, ladies?
Mm.
They quiet today. Oh man.
Maybe is it hot?
Well, it's raining. Well, it just rained. We just had a good little thunderstorm that came through. Um, but okay, since they don't want to ask any questions, how important was you to figure out that your nutrition was important for you to run fast?
It took me a long time. So I started running when I was 12, and I didn't start to worry and focus on my diet until till right before I made my first Olympic team. That's like, it took me 12 years to figure that out. And the sooner you can figure it out, the better. So if you're curious about what my diet's like, I took a food sensitivity test, which you can do from home. You could literally order it online and take it from home. And mine came back that, I can't eat yeast, I can't eat dairy, I can't eat eggs. So one of the first things I had to do was get rid of all that stuff. Then I stopped eating. I'm very low carb and I don't eat sugar. And so these are things that are quite difficult because I have a sweet tooth. I love Sour Patch Kids and Twizzlers and cookies and stuff. But for me as a long jumper, it's best to be as strong as possible, as light as possible. And it took me far too long to understand that. Just know that it is so important that once I started to focus on my diet and my nutrition, I won 7 medals. And it was like just a stretch of time. My body was so healthy. I didn't have to worry about tears or energy levels plummeting. I was eating my nutrition. I was giving my body what it needed and not giving it anything it didn't need. And it's difficult, and this is why people don't do it. But every off season, I weigh 150 pounds, but I have never run sub 11 or jumped 7 meters, which is 23 feet, weighing more than 135 pounds. So every year I go from 150 down to 130. So I'll start my fall training up here and you'll see me at the Olympic Games down here. And it's just a very slow, deliberate fuel plan. And it's not that I'm just eating, rabbit food and lettuce. I'm just avoiding stuff that my body doesn't need. Like none of us need sugar to operate. That's not something the body needs. None of us actually needs to carb load before track meets, unless you're like a marathon runner or you're burning massive amounts of calorie. I'm a sprinter. I don't need any of that. So I don't have to give my body what it needs. And the reason I started with the food sensitivity test was so that I could know for sure what it was, because it's so easy to hear a nutritionist say, like, don't do this, do that. It's a very specific and personal journey, the whole what you should and should not be eating. But it's really important.
So you say you went from 150 to under 130 by the time the summer came when y'all was doing a little bit more rounds of running.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did most of the weight loss come in the fall? Well, your season is kind of late, so you can go kind of 6 to 8 months of being strict with your diet. But what would you say for as a high school girl? I always told them, you need to lose your most weight during the fall and not during
Oh
the
yeah.
actual season.
Oh yeah. So when you have more weight to lose, it comes off faster anyway. So in the fall, when that's fall training for me, so I'm never actually off, right? But I'm not competing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'm the most strict, and that's when most of the weight comes off. So it'll probably be off in 2.5 months at that point. But for a high school athlete, even if you cut sugar for 2 weeks, you'd see a difference. That's it. Like if that's the only thing you did, you would see a difference. And that's just a testament to how much sugar is in almost every single thing we eat and that we don't even realize, and how calorie dense sugar is by itself.
Yeah, we was having a debate in our group meet about fast food and Taco Bell and Chick-fil-A. And we was getting on the point to saying that, hey, you need to cut that food out because it has a lot of adjectives added to the food, that they
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Yeah, so the thing about the body, it's like it's honestly a perfect machine. It is like an evolutionary miracle, right? But here's a problem. our bodies didn't evolve with fast food. We created that food. It's processed. It's literally man-made. Your body digests an apple differently than it digests an apple flavored Jolly Rancher because your body was made to digest that apple in its entirety and use it the way whole foods break down in the body. And that's why fast food is so bad for us, because that processed food, it's almost like you consume it, you ingest it, and your body's like, okay, it tastes good, it smells like food, but what am I supposed to do with it? And then it like siphons it off to different areas in the body, and maybe you'll get some fuel out of it, but most of the time, if you're being honest, you don't feel that great not too long after you eat a bunch of fast food. And you also are feeling pretty hungry not too long after finishing it too. And that's really a telltale sign that you're not getting what you need from that food. But if you sat down and you had actual whole foods, a potato, sweet potato, banana, fruit, nut, something, that feels differently to the body, and the body uses every little bit of that. It doesn't store the excess like byproducts of fast food in random places in your body because it doesn't know what to do with it, because it doesn't recognize what it is. And that's basically what we're doing to our bodies when we stop at these places.
Okay, anyone have a question? I want to ask a question, ladies. Come on, y'all.
Did you ever have doubts?
Doubts?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, all the time, including today. they're just part of the process. They really are. And I've seen so many people get upset with themselves for, not being able to not have the doubts. I mean, it is what it is. I was standing at the blocks at Rio. I don't know if you guys have seen the race where we had to run by ourselves because we had some drama before the relay, and we had to do a solo time trial to race our way back into the final. But even though I know that I'm the best first leg ever, because that's just not opinion, I have a world record, right? So even though I know that, I still had this thought walking to the starting blocks, like I was gonna somehow mess it up in a race by myself. I remember getting the blocks and two thoughts crossed my mind, and I am a professional athlete. The first one was, what if I leave the baton behind? Like, what the hell? Like, all these races that I've done, and I'm at the Olympic Games. Like, it's our time to run the final. And that thought crossed my mind. The second one was, how embarrassing would it be to false start when I'm out here by myself? That was the second thought. And instead of, being like, oh my God, following each thought down the rabbit hole, like, oh my God, I'm going to leave the baton behind. Oh my God, if I false start. I kind of just treated myself like, that's funny. And I moved on about my business because I don't know where those thoughts came from. I 100% control how I react to them. So don't worry so much about the fact that you have them, especially if you're doing the work, if you're putting in work. Because one thing is, there's a difference between getting to a race and saying, I might lose today because you haven't been at practice all week versus I might lose today because you just don't have confidence in yourself. There's a difference. And so if it's the second one, I just want to remind you that you don't need confidence to go execute. You just need to go execute. So it doesn't matter how you really feel. I have been scared to death before every 100-meter race at every meet and before every jump in the long jump. And I always remind myself, doesn't matter if I'm afraid. Being afraid is not going to stop me from running as fast as I can down the runway. Being afraid or feeling unsure shouldn't stop me from taking off the way I know how to take off. It shouldn't stop me from holding my legs up in the air as long as possible. You can do all of that afraid. You can do all of that because I do. There's not a single medal that I've won that I haven't been scared to death during its acquisition. So don't beat yourself up about the doubt, especially if you're doing the work, because some of that just you can't control, but you can control how you indulge them. And so my advice to you is just don't, especially if they're not based in fact.
Now,
You
okay, with your times, what did you run in high school compared to now professionally, your PR for as a professional
My PR in the 100 was 1174
coming out
in
of
the
high
100.
school?
And I ran that one time at the last meet of the year, my senior year in high school at the state championship. My PR now is 1078 in the 100. So almost a second difference. High school, I jumped 20 feet 9, and I'm at 23 feet 6.5 inches right now.
You kind of alluded to it, and I was wondering if you can elaborate on it more. You said nerves is kind of something normal part of the process, but what calms your nerves is the little things you do in practice. Can you talk about how important it is to work on the fundamentals and really execute your drills to kind of like, no, I'm doing the things in practice to help me be prepared for competition?
Absolutely. You have to treat competition as a showcase of what you do in practice. Practice, every single drill, including the warm up, is like a rehearsal for the showcase, which is the competition. So you can't just get out and practice and then shuffle jog or do a bad warm up and do sloppy sprint drills and then get to race day and then suddenly become this super mechanic, right? You should not do that to yourself, because if you show up every day and you do exactly what you're supposed to do every single day, your execution at a meet becomes automatic, right? It's almost like autopilot. And when that happens, you can feel any kind of way, but you're still going to get out there. You're still going to step up to the line and do what you compete or what you practice every single day. So as for me, I don't do anything in a meet that I probably haven't seen in practice. Like, I don't expect miracles at track meets. That's just not the way it works. This is the world of science and physics. There are huge performances. There's the Cinderella stories that we love, but we also have to remember that those people were practicing every day. There's no such thing as overnight success or miracles in this sport. So when you do that, when you put in that effort every single day, you can call on all of that at a competition. And that is unaffected by your feelings. Like, I know what it's like to be nervous. I basically throw up before every 100-meter final, like in the warm up. And I am scared to death, and even sometimes walk out to the line and look to the left and see like Shelly Ann and look to the right and see Elaine Thompson. And I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I don't belong here. But I still remember, like, wait a minute, I have the best start because I work on this in practice. I know what my numbers are. I see it in training. I've talked to my coach about this. We know where I'm at. And now the only thing I have to do is get out of my own way and show up for the competition. And that's what you have to do. But you can't do it if you're not taking yourself seriously at practice. Because it's almost like you're going to get to a meet and be wishing on a star. You don't need to do that if you do the work. You can just bet on yourself at that point.
Now, I noticed you said something about your start, right? Now, what contribute to that? I know what contribute to it, because you're explosive in long jump as well. But what were some things that helped contribute to you being so explosive? Like, you could tell when you hit that board, you coming off explosive. The same thing in the blocks. I remember watching a video where it was the Olympics when they put Shelly Ann on your leg and you felt like there was disrespect. So what were some of those things?
Well, there's a lot of internal, what I call hate fire, right? So if you follow me, not everything is all like peaches and roses. There's like a lot of adversity involved in having a track career this long, or just being a human in general. And so one of the things I do is, just ball all that up and explode it out when the gun goes off, or slam it through the long jump board on takeoff. So a lot of that is finding a way to channel emotion, including the nerves, including the doubt, into performance. The other thing is you got to just be a student of your sport. Know why and how you're doing something. These days with the internet, unlike when I started out in high school, you can look up and watch a YouTube video. Hopefully it's the right information, but continue to learn. You can always be learning about what to do. And so when my start really started to improve when we began doing biomechanical analysis and I understood the angles and, just making sure I was aware of every step. Like I know how many steps it takes me to get to 10 meters when I'm really rolling. That's how aware I am of that. Also, I'm really strong and I'm not shy about developing that strength either through plyometrics or in the gym. I've never been of the mindset that muscles would make me look too manly or not girly or feminine enough. I don't care. If I can beat you up, I can beat you up. I want to be strong enough to do what I want to do to reach my goals. And I've never been shy about that. So strength is a very necessary part of the puzzle. And I just give myself permission to use all the tools available to me to do that. And you guys have all that. You have your coaches, you've got what my coach calls YouTube University. You've got you've got all these resources where you can figure out the pieces to the puzzle, because it's not rocket science and it's not top secret. So it's all here. We just got to put it together.
Anybody have a question?
When did you realize like that you were the best?
When I won my Olympic gold medal in 2016. And even then that was only for that specific day. So I've never actually been of the mind that I'm the best. What I am is hard to beat. But it's really the thing about track and field is like, yeah, you can get a medal and you can win a race, but that just means for that moment of time you were the best person on that day. And that's something to celebrate and that's something to be happy about. But if you ever get to a point where you're just sitting back, self-satisfied, like I'm the best, guarantee your next practice is going to be trash. Because you have to keep that mindset that there's always something to be improved upon. There's always somebody who's just a little bit better at something than you. So Rio 2016, when I finally won the long jump gold medal, was the first and only time where I kind of exhaled like, yes, I'm the best. And then immediately after that, I proceeded to try to figure out how I could continue to get better. So it almost never happens for people who want to be great, who have long careers and be elite. That is not a thought that we indulge. Does that make sense?
Now you talked about the mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know you do the yoga, and how does that, prepare your mind? Because these are high school girls, they constantly thinking about something. They're always on their phone, so their brain never gets to really relax and shut down and just be complete emptiness and don't worry about nothing. So what's some things you can suggest to them as far as, clearing their mind, getting their mind right?
It doesn't even have to be yoga. It could just be learning how to meditate even for like 3 minutes. And what meditation does is it'll allow you to get to a point where you walk to your starting blocks, even if you have all of these feelings and all of these thoughts. Exhale, and your mind is still, calm, blank. And that frees you to just go do what you came to do. And that's a really good position to be in. It's like a fast track to being in the zone. But you can only get there if you can shut up all the clutter and chit chat that is going on in our brains all the time. And that takes practice. And that practice comes from just starting to meditate. You can start with 1 minute of just breathing and sitting still, and then keep increasing and keep increasing. There's this like, I get to the starting blocks, I put my hands on my thighs or my knees, and I'm just breathing because now I'm here. There's nothing else to do. There's nothing else to think. I'm here now. And that's the zone. And that's what I think makes me so hard to beat, because once you get there, All you got to do is what you do every single day at practice. And yoga is just an extension for me of a sitting meditation. Yoga is a moving meditation, essentially, because you're linking your breathing to movement. Now, it has a ton of other side effects that are good for you, but the biggest thing yoga teaches you is just how to be right here in the moment and control your body and your thoughts. And every athlete in the world in any sport can benefit from that.
Go ahead, ask your question if you have one, ladies.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So when it comes to like training and like having a bunch of different coaches kind of all telling you different things at the same time, how do you kind of like go through the process of taking what everybody's saying at once and executing all of it at the same time when it's a whole bunch of different instructions?
Yeah, I don't have that problem because I only deal with one person, but my one person does talk a lot. So it sometimes seems like I'm getting a lot, right? And so what I usually do is I do it one at a time. Like, so if you give me a cue and then I have to go like do a block start, I'll hold that cue in my awareness. I'll think about what I was just told. I'll do the block start. If the block start was better, cool. If it was trash, throwing it out, not listening to you on that. Moving on to the next thing. That's basically how we determine what cues and language works for me. And because you're not in a position where you can just fire people for telling you the wrong thing, you can just respectfully disregard what clearly doesn't work. And it's not a feeling. It has to be based on fact, right? You can't, so many young athletes are like, that didn't feel right. But it's like, you don't exactly know what it's supposed to feel like because you're not an expert in that, right? So you can't really go off of feeling, but it's something that you can experiment with, is what I'm getting at. Hear, like, listen, and then go do. And if it gets better, okay. If it doesn't, politely disregard it. Don't be rude. Don't tell them they can't talk to you ever again. Just disregard that piece and then try the next thing that you're told, the next cue, and then try that and see what happens. I mean, I do that every day. Every day. Sometimes I get a ridiculous long jump cue. I go out there, try to do it. I face plant in the pit, and I'm like, nope, that's not the one. That's not it. And we move on to something else.
Can you explain to them what is a cue?
A cue is basically when a coach is trying to explain what they want you to do. So it's the language they use to get you to execute something. So for me, because I'm running so fast on the long jump runway, I sometimes don't drive my takeoff knee high enough at the board because everything's happening so fast. So when my coach says to me, you need to be Wonder Woman at takeoff, that's a cue. It cues my brain to know that I need to come in and hold this superwoman, superhero position at takeoff. That's a cue. So little things like that can help remind you what to do. Now, sometimes to do the same thing, he'll tell me, remember to come through flat, flat, and then knee punch. It's the same thing as Wonder Woman, but all of those words, they don't work for me. So both are cues, but one is effective and one isn't. And that's why that's why you kind of have to experiment.
How often do you run the 400?
Never. Never, ever. I had to in high school for the 4x4s. I had to in college because you have to take one for the team on occasion. But like I said, after I won world championships my sophomore year and I got to decide what was going to happen because I was pro, I stopped running 400s. They hurt too bad.
Couple more questions, ladies. Come on, y'all. This is for y'all now.
They're shy. Was somebody saying something?
I think somebody was. Okay, I'm gonna ask another one since they being quiet now. I noticed like your attitude out there, like you like to me, you're like a dog, you're a beast out there. Did you gain that from your coach or was that just in you? Because sometimes the athlete takes on the personality of the coach.
Yeah, that's true. That does happen. But I was born to a father who was a martial artist and a boxer. And when I first started in track and field, I was what he called soft. And he decided that part of my training would be to put me on the punching bag. And so I learned how to box. And he basically, this is the same kind of aggression that I need to generate from within myself and bring to a competition. So it's actually my dad's fault that I'm that intense at a competition. And I've gotten I've coaches that know exactly which buttons to push in order to bring that out of me, but because that was instilled in me so early, I don't take on the persona of my coaches. But so it started early and it's kind of just who I am, little but fierce.
Um. Oh,
Go ahead, go ahead.
what is your favorite thing about being pro? Like, what has been your most exhilarating experience?
I think the travel is what I love the most. And just the fact that it's opened up the entire world. Like literally, me making a decision to better myself as an athlete has allowed me to live overseas. I mean, track and field and me being pro is the reason why I can speak 3 languages. It's the reason why I have the following I have, the reason I'm able to do speaking engagements in Oslo, Norway. It's like all of this came from track and field, which is why it's so important for me to talk to athletes like you. It's like, look what you can do. Like a little bit of commitment, a little bit of discipline right now can go a really long way and open up all of these doors you couldn't even imagine. I filled 3 passports, with stamps and just traveling all over the world. Now, not all stories are glamorous. There's some horror stories from overseas, but they're stories that I will always have. The experience can't be duplicated. And if I had to pull that off without it being paid for or funded by track, it probably cost me a couple $1,000,000 to do. And so it's been a gift to be able to be pro, to compete, go to the Olympics, but to see the world.
We got about 4 minutes. So ladies, y'all need to try to get your questions in now. Come on.
I made everybody shy. And see, I thought I was like easy to talk to.
Anybody else have a question?
When did you start running?
I started when I was 12. Yeah, that was the first time I was introduced to track and field was when I was 12 years old. And I was trying not to run track. I was actually trying to be on the wrestling team, but my mom said no. And so the only other sport I could do that spring was track and field. So here I am, track and field athlete. Could have been a wrestler.
Bring it, y'all. Bring it, bring it. Somebody said it's never this quiet in the group, and they always going at it. Now they acting all quiet right now.
I see. I feel bad. It's like I don't want to punk anybody into silence.
What made you take it serious?
Yeah, good question. My dad told me in high school that I had to go to college, but that he and my mom weren't paying for it, and that I needed to figure out how to get there. And so from that moment forward, I was like, okay, let me buckle down because I need to figure out how to get a college scholarship. And so that was my junior year in high school. Oh, sophomore year in high school, junior year. That's when that happened. I buckled down. We did the work. I got serious. My diet was still trash, but everything else got more serious. And I earned that scholarship. I actually earned an academic scholarship because I graduated with a 4.3, but I also was offered a full track and field scholarship too. So getting to college was a thing that turned it on for me.
We'll leave it open for one more question. We got enough time for one more question. Ladies,
I was
I was gonna say, did you have a top 5? And I was gonna ask, why did you pick Tennessee?
Okay, I technically didn't have a top 5. I chose Tennessee because I was in love with the coach. We were at a summer camp together, and I decided I was going to go wherever she was going. Her name was Carol Smith Gilbert. At the time, she was at Alabama, but when we were going back to the airport from this clinic, she got the job at Tennessee. I looked at my dad. I was like, "We're going to Tennessee." But then my mom was like, "You have to take all of your 5 visits," and so I took all 5 of my official visits, knowing that I was just going to go to Tennessee at the end. So I would say that I actually didn't have a top 5. I knew who I wanted to coach me, and I knew where she was, and that was that on that.
All right, last question. Got about a minute. Got to be quick. I want to thank you again. How was breaking that world record? How was that experience?
Unreal. We actually didn't even know that we broke the record. We were waiting for the time to be adjusted. And once we realized it, we kind of knew what was going to happen. Our chemistry was perfect. Everything had been perfect going into that moment. And I'm so happy it was the 4 of us that did it together. So we had been together since Penn Relays earlier that year. And it was just magic. One of those perfect moments that'll be hard to duplicate.
Okay, cool. Again, I want to thank you. You know, I know it's not enough time. I know you go on and on. I know the girls was going to love this experience. Wish you the most with the rest of the season. You got any more meets coming up?
We'll see. I'll be running here in Texas on Thursday, but you guys can always ask me your questions via Instagram or whatever social you follow me on, because you were shy here. I'll still answer your questions.
Okay, cool. All right, ladies, y'all go ahead and tell the bye, tell the thank you.
Bye.
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 All right, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
Bye.
Bye.